The blizzard that changed everything. The storm came without mercy, the kind of white fury that erased roads, swallowed sounds, and made even the strongest men feel small. Snow slammed sideways against the windshield like handfuls of gravel, and the wind howled as if the mountains themselves were screaming. Lieutenant Jake Mercer, former Navy SEAL, tightened his grip on the steering wheel and leaned forward, eyes narrowed, scanning for shapes in the endless white. He had survived deserts where the heat cooked the breath out of your lungs, jungles where danger hid in every leaf, and oceans that could crush a man without apology, but this blizzard felt different. This wasn't an enemy you could see. This was nature, cold and indifferent, and it didn't care about medals, training, or past heroics. Jake was only out here because something in his gut wouldn't let him turn back. He had passed a broken fence miles ago, half buried under snow, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt watched, as if someone or something had needed him to notice. SEAL training taught him to trust instincts over logic, and that instinct had dragged him into the storm instead of away from it. Jake pulled the truck over when he saw it, a dark shape near a frozen ditch, barely visible through the swirling snow. At first, he thought it was debris. Then it moved. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. He killed the engine, grabbed his coat, and stepped out into the screaming wind. The cold hit like a punch, stealing his breath, burning his face, crawling through every gap in his clothing. He moved slowly, deliberately, boots crunching through deep snow, every step a calculation. As he got closer, the shape resolved into a woman, thin, soaked, and kneeling in the snow. Her arms were wrapped around a bundle pressed tightly to her chest. She didn't look up when he approached. She barely seemed aware of him at all. Jake crouched a few feet away, lowering himself to her level so he wouldn't startle her. Years ago, he had learned that fear could make people do dangerous things. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and steady, the same tone he used to calm civilians in war zones. "Ma'am," he said, raising his voice over the wind. "You're going to freeze out here. Let me help you." The woman flinched but didn't run. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her head. Her face was pale, lips cracked and blue, eyes sunken with exhaustion. Snow clung to her hair and eyelashes, making her look like a ghost rising out of the storm. She shook her head weakly, as if the effort itself cost her more than she had left to give. Jake's eyes dropped to the bundle in her arms, and his chest tightened. Puppies. Tiny, trembling puppies, no more than a few weeks old, pressed against her body for warmth. Their small bodies rose and fell in shallow breaths, faint whimpers barely audible over the wind. Jake swallowed hard. He had seen wounded men beg to be left behind, had seen children cling to broken toys in bombed-out villages, but something about this, about a woman choosing to kneel in a blizzard rather than abandon helpless animals, hit him in a place he didn't know was still raw. "You can't stay here," Jake said, firmer now, urgency cutting through his calm. "You'll die. They will too." Her lips trembled as she spoke, voice thin and brittle. "They won't survive without me." Jake exhaled slowly, controlling the surge of emotion rising in his chest. "They won't survive with you if you freeze," he replied gently. "But if you come with me, all of you have a chance." For a long moment, she didn't answer. The wind screamed. Snow piled against Jake's knees. Time felt suspended, fragile as glass. Finally, her arms loosened slightly, just enough for Jake to see the puppies' faces, tiny noses pink with cold, eyes barely open, bodies shaking. The woman looked down at them with a kind of love that made Jake's throat tighten. "I tried," she whispered, almost lost to the storm. "I tried to get help. No one stopped." Her shoulders sagged, and Jake realized with alarm that she was on the edge of collapse. Hypothermia. She was running out of time. Without another word, Jake shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her and the puppies together, cocooning them in warmth. She gasped at the sudden heat, blinking rapidly as if waking from a dream. "Hey," Jake said, steadying her as she swayed. "Stay with me. Focus on my voice." He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was, like she weighed no more than the snow itself. Training took over. Secure the vulnerable, move fast, don't panic. He cradled the puppies against her chest with one arm and supported her with the other, forcing his legs to push through the deep snow back toward the truck. By the time he reached the vehicle, his muscles burned and his lungs ached, but he didn't stop. He opened the passenger door, helped her inside, then gently transferred the puppies onto the seat between them, wrapping them in spare blankets. The woman slumped back, eyes fluttering, breath shallow. Jake slammed the door shut, ran around to the driver's side, and turned the engine over. The truck roared to life, heater blasting warm air into the cab. Only then did Jake allow himself a breath. He glanced at the woman, then at the puppies, his jaw tightening. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was a fight against the clock. As the truck crawled forward through the storm, Jake tried to keep her awake, asking simple questions. Her name was Lily. She spoke in fragments, as if each word had to be pulled from somewhere deep inside. She said she had been living in an abandoned trailer on the edge of town. Said the puppy's mother had been hit by a car days ago. Said she couldn't leave them behind. When Jake asked about family, she went quiet. The silence told him more than words ever could. He had seen that look before, the look of someone the world had quietly decided to forget. Jake's hands tightened on the wheel. He had worn the uniform of a country that promised to protect the vulnerable, yet here she was, nearly dying in the snow with no one to notice. The road disappeared entirely, forcing Jake to rely on memory and instinct. He drove slower, scanning for landmarks, heart pounding with each gust of wind that rocked the truck. At one point, a puppy whimpered loudly, and Lily stirred, instinctively pulling the blanket tighter around them. Jake glanced over, a strange ache filling his chest. Even half frozen, even barely conscious, she was protecting them. He wondered how many times she had been forced to choose survival for others over herself. He wondered how many times she had been invisible. And for the first time in years, Jake felt something crack open inside him, an anger not at an enemy, but at a world that allowed this kind of suffering to exist quietly, unnoticed. Hours or maybe minutes later, the lights of a small town finally appeared through the snow like distant stars. Relief washed over Jake so powerfully his hands trembled. He pulled into the first open building he could find, a small emergency clinic, lights blazing against the darkness. He slammed the brakes, jumped out, and shouted for help. Nurses rushed out with a gurney, their faces tightening at the sight of Lily and the puppies. As they wheeled her inside, Jake followed, refusing to let go of the bundle until the last possible second. Lily's eyes fluttered open briefly as they transferred her. She looked at Jake, fear and gratitude tangled together, and whispered, "Please, don't leave them." Jake leaned close so she could hear him. "I won't," he said. "I promise." As the door swung shut behind her, Jake stood there, snow melting off his boots, heart hammering in his chest. He looked down at the puppies now cradled in his arms, tiny lives that had almost vanished into the storm. For a moment, the weight of everything pressed down on him, the missions he'd survived, the brothers he'd lost, the life he thought he'd left behind. He had always believed his fighting days were over, that he was done saving anyone. But standing there, holding fragile lives rescued from a blizzard, Jake realized something profound. Some battles don't end when you leave the battlefield. Some battles find you again and quietly, heartbreakingly, when you least expect them. And as the storm raged on outside, Jake Mercer had no idea that this rescue was only the beginning, or that what would follow would break his heart in ways no war ever had. An asterisk. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that humanity still survives even in the coldest storms.